Welcome back to the Dallas Prospect. I am DDP, and today we're going to be combining things just a little bit. We're less than a couple hours away now from game 4. I do still want to talk a little bit more about game 3, however, because yesterday was just insanely busy for me. I did initially have something out for it, but I was like, I didn't I didn't love that video. I could do that better. And sometimes you feel pressed to get something out there before the next game. So you just kind of push the envelope and yeah, I can do better. So I'm gonna try to do better today. Shout out Wade Lamb, first in the house. How goes it? So before we shift gears into game 4 here and talk about that matchup, let's take a look at what went down in game 3. Now, the atmosphere in the AAC was fantastic. I loved the fact that even though the Mavericks offense wasn't just clicking on all cylinders, the things they were getting was very balanced. They were getting a lot of plays that kind of energized. You saw a much better performance from like Daniel Gafford, his first time really showing up in this series. You also saw a lot of alley-oop dunks, things that just energized the crowd in general. I don't know how many dunks the Mavericks had in that game, but it felt like an awful lot. Not necessarily like when they had, what was it, like the 16 dunks or whatever it was towards the end of the game or towards the end of the series. I lost my train of thought here. I just got a notification Kawhi Leonard is out for game 4. So there's your breaking news for that. But whether it was one of those late regular season games they had where they had like 16 dunks, whatever the case may be, it was just a really impressive showing there where even though the Clippers jumped out to like a 23-16 lead, you still had the option and the ability to kind of hang in there and take those punches. And so Dallas, even though they're not getting a lot of great offense in the early going with that, I think Kyrie was like 1 of 5 or 2 points in the first half, turned it on when it was absolutely needed, stepped up and was there. It was not a great game offensively speaking from Luka. I think Luka's playing his ass off here. Like he is defending harder than he's ever had to defend in the playoffs before. And he's running like 43, 44, 45 minutes a game. So he's running himself gassed. The difference is the Mavericks actually have some depth now. And as I said in my series preview, I had several points in that, by the way, that have thus far proven to be correct. So I'm going to collect my flowers for that because there were people criticizing certain points that I made. I said, as it relates to the news I just gave before, that breaking news that Kawhi is out for game 4, I said, if that knee is not totally right, one, I see Dallas taking this series in 6. And the fact that you lost once already without Kawhi tells me that's still possible, that it goes 6. You still got to handle your business. No excuses, no anything. There was really not an excuse for game 1. But even with that being the case, I said role players play better at home. And when you look at guys like Daniel Gafford really struggling in games 1 and 2, borderline unplayable in those first 2 games, responding much better in game 3. Now, if you look at his points in game 3, it's not going to blow you away. He only had 8 points, 26 minutes, 4 boards. So you look at it that way and you're like, oh, that's very ho-hum. 4 or 5 from the field, that's nice, especially when he was 1 of 7 in the first 2 games. Again, led the regular season in field goal percentage. But the difference to me, 26 minutes, only committed 1 foul, and he had 2 steals, 3 blocks. That's your difference. He's protecting the paint. Now, he's already capped Paul George trying a tomahawk dunk at the rim twice in 3 games. Another point that I made, I brought back up Paul George's comment in the 2021 matchup and said, it was true then, and the Clippers got the win. But when he said Dallas doesn't have rim protectors, I said, that was true at the time, but it's going to be different now. And if you think it's going to be as easy to get to the rim and just enforce your will, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. And that's kind of been the case because Gafford, even in that first game when he was just terrible, he got capped by Paul George. Now, in that particular play, the block fell right into Zubac's hands under the basket, so they still got a bucket out of it. But at some point, I think there's going to be a little bit of second guessing there for Paul George if he tries to drive the paint and he sees Gafford rolling over to help, trying to meet him at the rim. At some point, that's going to come into play. Your other role players, Dante played a little bit better at home as well. I still have not seen. This is one where I just collected flowers. Now I'm not gonna collect these. I'm gonna say I really thought Dante Exum could be an X factor in this series, and that has not really been the case. He did play better in Game 3, but I still haven't seen enough from him. He gave me no points in this last game, 12 minutes, not a whole lot. But I felt like how he was able to help defend and how he was able to help facilitate the offense a little bit helped. It was at least something that we didn't really get from him at all in games 1 and 2. So very ho-hum there. That's one place that I've largely been wrong. And Dallas just has to kind of work around that right now. PJ Washington, game 1, the effort was there. The defense was there. Game 2, he had his big shots and his big moments there. But it was really, obviously, game 3, and why we keep using the phrase standing on their business. PJ Washington went full dog mode here, and you can see it, just Luka vibing with that as PJ striking his pose, staring down the Clipper bench after this nothingness of a scuffle. It was that Terrence Mann did not like that PJ was kind of glaring in the direction of the Clippers bench heading into a timeout. And so Terrence Mann tries to get up, get in his face a little bit. PJ just shrugs him off, goes, "Oh, you don't like me staring at the bench? Well, now I'm going to stare at him even harder, and I'm going to strike a pose. I'm not going anywhere." And as the two teams get a little bit chippy, I like that you got Luka kind of like boxing out Zubats there, just so he can stand there just kind of smiling and just like, okay, yeah, I like this. And I said this in the video yesterday, shout out to Prospect's own Inni and Duca. What you have right now with PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford to an extent. PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford are what Josh Richardson and James Johnson were supposed to be for the Mavericks a couple of years ago in that 2021 series. We were told these guys were dogs. And really, PJ Washington especially, you just see this. They finally have those kind of guys here, those kind of enforcer type guys where Russell Westbrook is going out of his mind, going full Pat Beverly, how everything has come full circle here. He is now what he sought to destroy. He is Patrick Beverly. He's the guy that's being the irritant, who's being the instigator, who's playing up to the crowd or trying to play innocent about every single thing he's doing, whether it's knocking over Luka and getting a flagrant one, whether it's hitting Josh Green in the head, whether it's trying to shove Luka, trying to hook his arm and whip him around because he doesn't like how the game is going. And by the way, he shouldn't have liked how that game was going. He was literally 0 of 7, had 1 point. He had a flagrant one and a double technical. It's the first time in his career he was held scoreless in the postseason. First time in his career that he earned an ejection from a playoff game. And it's just like, man, you look at all of this. You look at how he's responding to this, how he's trying to instigate everything. And PJ's just right there. PJ's literally like, Russ grabs Luka. PJ's just like, yo, back up. Gives him a little shove. Russ tries to escalate it further, gives a hard shove at PJ. PJ, again, just smiling at him. Just like, dude, I'm not scared of you. I'm not anything. And you cannot tell me that Luka and the rest of the Mavericks aren't looking at like that example, that attitude and mindset that PJ's putting there and just loving it. Because if they're guys from that 2021 team, if they're remnants of that team, they know how much they needed this, how that difference in attitude is everything. And it's amazing it took this long to finally get those kind of guys here, but they've got it now. And it doesn't matter that PJ had 10 points in that game and that he was 0 of 4 from 3. It didn't matter. He was 5 of 10 from the field in 34 minutes, 10 points, 5 boards. And his impact, 3 steals, only 2 fouls. He was a plus 23. Like PJ Washington's versatile defense, his attitude, the way he's carrying himself and the way that his team is riding that energy a little bit. And Daniel Gafford too. Like Gafford's a great energy guy. Again, he has not had a great series so far, even though he was much better yesterday or 2 days ago. But even still, there's a lot to look at with this team and kind of say like, okay, they're figuring some stuff out now. Dallas is getting that penetration. They're freeing up guys inside where they're able to get full team effort here. They're able to get these alley-oop dunks around the rim, these drop-off passes. Speaking of guys that are just coming alive here, Derek Lively off the bench. Welcome to the series. Again, I have nothing but love and respect for Derek Lively playing through what he's playing through right now. He was huge in this game 3 that we just had. 13 points off the bench. And man, it just felt like he was getting everything that he wanted in that alley oop form here. 13 and 2, 6 of 8 from the field, had a couple blocks as well. His defense, his mobility. He's a very underrated passer too, for a big man. So he's got a unique skill set that I think will set him up. I'm one of those people who talked when he was drafted, and again, it's one of those things I caught some heat for. I said when he was drafted, I thought he would be Tyson 2.0 with a jump shot. And I still think he will get there. You keep seeing these shoot arounds where he's splashing corner threes and it looks effortless. The form looks good. I think it will get there. But I didn't really know a whole lot about the passing game. I maybe mentioned it, but I think what you see of it and what it could be with some time and with some seasoning is really, really nice. I think you got something there. But you got to give them the time for it here. So love what I'm seeing from this team. Love how they're responding, and they handled their business throughout that, man. It's not just that they, even with Luka and Kyrie, Luka got going a bit in that second quarter, but he looked gassed late third quarter. And that's why it was so huge to have a guy like Kyrie ready to just step in, take over, and close the door. But when this lead, I think it was like 11 or 13 at the half. And then through the third quarter, the Clippers do make a run. They do take what was a 23-point lead and whittle it all the way down to 6 points late third quarter. And you kind of start to go like, I'm having a little bit of flashbacks to, I think it was game 6 in 2021, where Dallas looked like they were going to run away early and LA just patiently reeled them back in. And I think it was literally before the half or like right at the start of the third quarter, they basically fully caught him in that game. And you're just like, I don't know, man. I don't know. In this case, you have things get heated, things get close. And then I think it was with like a minute 18 left in the third quarter. Kyrie was just like, all right, I'm still sitting on like 1 of 5 for 2 points. That's cute. Let's put this away. And then he just goes into his bag, and good Lord, whether he's hitting the sham god, whether he's hitting falling down, pull-up jumpers, transition threes, shot clock expiring threes, he's just annihilating them. He scores 19 of his 21 points, I think it is, in like the last minute 18 of the third quarter on. So just absolutely running away with it. Dallas takes what was suddenly looking momentarily like a perilous situation, which, by the way, was significant to me because this wasn't a good game for the Clippers. It's not just, I'll get into it here in a minute. It wasn't just Kawhi struggling. Yeah, Kawhi is out for those just now tuning in. I mentioned that right as it came across the wire right at the start of the stream. Kawhi Leonard out game 4. That is very interesting. We'll see how that shapes things up here. But as it wasn't just his struggling in game 3, you also had a dud of a game from Paul George. Paul George had 3 buckets in that game for 7 points. All 3 of the makes were spectacular, but he was 3 of 11 from the field, 1 of 6 from 3. You also had James Harden, 44 minutes. Yeah, he had 21 points on 7 of 13. But really, James Harden, he can give you those kinds of runs in stretches. But aside from like that second quarter that was disastrous for Dallas in game 1, Harden has not controlled the series. So Kawhi not being Kawhi, Paul George having his first dud of the series, Harden being good for stretches, but not really able to be that guy anymore, in my opinion. And then Russ just being a complete ghost for them off the bench. All they had was Zubac, who killed it, 19 points, 8 boards, 8 of 11 from the field. Also had a block and a steal. And Norman Powell, 21 and 6 off the bench. They had 22 points off the bench in that game. 21 of them came from Powell. Russell had the one other free throw. Cool. So the fact that you were in that situation late third quarter was some cause for concern for me. But that's why you got your second superstar. You got Kyrie putting it away, putting it out of mind. Don't sweat a thing. You step away from it, and you end up coasting to a win here. So you were sitting up 11 points going into the fourth quarter. The Clippers sitting on 67 points. And then you just coast. Like, you win by 11, 101-90, but you get garbage time buckets there because the Clippers pulled all their starters with like 3.5 minutes left. Dallas did the same. And so really, this was like a 15, 16-point game. Dallas absolutely controlled it. And here's the thing. Dallas lost the field goal percentage battle, lost the three-point percentage battle. In fact, they shot 26% from three to Dallas. They lost the free throw battle, both in terms of percentage and attempts. They do win the turnover battle. They do win the assist battle. They lose the rebounding battle by 5. And yeah, that's really for the rest of that battle. But they lose a lot of significant categories in this matchup. And you would look at that on paper normally and combine that with the fact that Luka goes 7 of 25 from the field, including 3 of 13 from three, and only shoots 7 free throws. You're going to look at that and say, like, that doesn't sound, historically speaking, like a recipe for a Dallas win. And you would be correct. But Dallas controls it. Why? Because the defense was smothering, because you got your role players in. Josh Green, I saw somebody in the comments say it earlier. Josh Green, very good, drawing multiple offensive fouls from Norman Powell, getting in his head. Luka is in Norman Powell's head. Norman Powell's not even a strong defender. So Luka getting in his head and making them make self-inflicted mistakes, self-inflicted wounds is just huge. So you look at all of this. I said if this was a war of attrition, it would favor Dallas. That is panning out. With the exception of the first half of game 1, Dallas has been the better team. Some of you didn't want to believe me when I was talking about this in my post-game show for game 1. I literally said, I know how bad this was, but as you break it down and kind of look at it, you say, you know, they kicked our ass and took it to us in the first half. That second quarter in particular, 8 points scored offensively. That combined with the Clippers being like a plus 24 or plus 30, whatever it was from three, basically is the game there. The Clippers, great three-point shooting team in the regular season. I think 40% as a team, something like that. They still had to play over their head in a near flawless game despite Kawhi being out. And even with all of that, Dallas took a 29-point lead, whittled it down to 15. And I still think they frankly had a chance in the fourth quarter because they got that lead down to 15 with like 8.5 minutes left. But I think Jason Kidd makes a couple of strategic rotational missteps, which, you know, we talked about that. I felt like he had a few mistakes in game 1 that were costly. And so that 15-point edge immediately swelled back to 23 because Paul George alone goes on a 7-0 run. And that basically put it out of reach for game 1. That's a missed opportunity because there was no Kawhi. No getting around that. No excusing that. However, the second half of that game, Dallas looked like Dallas. Game 2, Dallas looked like Dallas. Game 3, Dallas looked not just like Dallas. They looked like Dallas pulling away. Dallas asserting its will and completely overwhelming the Clippers. You add to that war of attrition, the fact that Kawhi he looked bad in game 3. He did not look at all like himself. Now, I thought he was ho-hum in his debut in game 2, but at least he had like 15 and 7 or 15 and 8 there. This game, he plays 25 minutes. He gets you 9 and 9, 4 of 7 from the field, -4 overall. And the thing is, he got a few minutes and then he sat for like 11 minutes of game time. And he comes back in and it was still just kind of like, it doesn't quite look right. The knee is not right. And that was obviously evident as what we see today. He's out again in this game. They rested him for like 23 days, getting back to from his last action he saw against the Magic, I want to say on March 29th, to game 2. He had a nice long rest. In fact, longer, because it would have been the Magic if he had played game 1, that would have been 23 days. So yeah, he had like 25 days rest and still had concerns with that knee and inflammation. He's come back for a couple games. They've lost both of those games. He has not looked right. Looks like the knee is bothering him more. He said after game 3 that the knee really did not respond the way they hoped. He said after game 1, I don't know if he means game 1 of the series. I'm guessing he means after his first game of the series, which would have actually been game 2. Yes, again, Kawhi is out game 4 today. So that is the breaking news that came out right as I was starting this live stream here. I think I was like a minute in, had barely gotten through my intro when I saw that come across the wire. So that's something to watch. War of attrition. I was right. Role players playing better at home, playing up to a higher level, and not reason for complete sounding of the alarm based on how they played in LA necessarily. That was right. You know, for the Clippers, I think the big thing, and Russell Westbrook is, I believe, suspended for game 4 as well, I saw. So this is tricky for LA here. They're already not a deep team. They have a short rotation for their primary minutes and their bench scoring as well. And so now you're already going to have to take some of that away here. They'll probably move some things around again. Probably move Coffee back into the starting lineup if they're going to match what they did in game one without Kawhi. So interesting to see there. But Dallas is playing with better pace. That's the thing I was talking about earlier when I was talking about Luka being gassed. It's not just that he's defending his ass off in this series, which he has been. He's been playing the best postseason defense of his career. It's not just that, though. It's also the fact that he's a little banged up. He is. We've seen him hobbled around. He left game one in the first quarter. Sorry, game three in the first quarter with his knee, went to the locker room, came back, seemed okay for the most part. But trying to defend like he's having to defend and take on the offensive load that he does, even with Kyrie there, playing 44, 45 minutes, whatever it was. And then on top of that, also trying to play with pace. That's a lot to ask of a guy. I don't care how good he is, what his status is. That is a lot to ask of anybody. So the fact that you're able to lean a little bit more on Kyrie, and the fact that if you're Dallas, you have a chance now to put this away. 3-1 does not mean anything, right? We've seen Dallas be up 2-0 in the Clippers in the past. It didn't matter. We've seen Dallas be up 3-2. It didn't matter. You need to see Dallas put this away. Don't just go up 3-1 here. Close out your business game 5 on the road. That's what you have to do. Like that is what you have to do here. Because you don't want to play around with your food. Like Luka is a little bit banged up. Luka hasn't looked quite right. This has actually been a down series for Luka. We know obviously the crazy heights that he's played to against the Clippers, but Luka in this series, his shooting splits aren't great. Certainly not up to his usual standards here. I want to see. I have that stat somewhere in here. I know I took a note of it here. By the way, shout out in the comments here. I see you all there. Let me run through some shout outs here as I also try to pad time as I find my stat I was looking for. I know I saved it. Well, as I say this, here it is. Got it. So Luka is shooting 37.7% overall from the field, 30% from deep, yet they're up 2-1. Compare that to how he normally plays in the postseason. Compare that to how he's played historically against the Clippers. It's night and day. It's shocking that they're in this position. So yes, I want more maximum optimum rest for Luka to give him time to get right. That's the biggest thing to me. Don't play with your food. Don't mess around with this. If the Clippers are looking older or they're looking a step slower, they're looking banged up and injured, you put it away and you try to get as much rest as you can for your key guys. Let's see here. Shout out to Frank. Gafford had the jitters. He played super Charmin soft in game 1. He did. And then game 2, he still wasn't necessarily holding it down, but he was much, much better in game 3, I thought. Even though like his points, rebounds, still not super high, certainly not the Gafford we were seeing in the regular season. I still really liked the rim protection he offered, the 3 blocks, 2 steals, connecting on some of those alley-oop dunks as well. Very good to see. And that's huge. I think Dallas having that balance. Let's see. Mavs will play OKC in the second round. Yeah, they would play OKC in the next round if that went that way. But I'm not even trying to get that far ahead right now. PJ doesn't give a fuck. No, he does not. No, he does not. And I'm here for it. Noah Brown says with Kawhi being out, he thinks it'll be harder for the Mavs. Maybe. I mean, Kawhi is Kawhi. He's still got that thing. But yeah, you see Kawhi even as he's running around trying to hit pull-up jumpers and things like that. Not just Luka locking him down. He doesn't look very explosive right now as he's trying to operate off the dribble. It's like he's trying to feel out where he's going. He doesn't have like a lot of confidence and strength pushing off and driving towards the basket. And so that's making it a little easier for some of these guys to slow him down. So on one hand, you could say, yeah, him not being in the game means, because of where he's at in terms of his health, maybe you're there. But I also think it's just limiting their firepower. And I don't think that's going to serve them well, especially when it's not a super deep team. The fact that you're now not just a little bit thinner, but it's that caliber of guy that you're missing. A guy who, even if he can't be great for the whole game, can still absolutely be there in the moment and deliver in crunch time. Not having him, I think, is huge. it could be a backs against the wall thing for them. And I do believe the Clippers feel that because for now 2.5 games or 3.5 games, no, that would 2.5 games. For 2.5 games, Dallas has been the better team. I so many predictions I made for this series, so many statements I made, even ones that I got pushed back and challenge on. I have so far played out with like 3 out of those 4 major predictions being right on the money so far with what we see. The only thing I was wrong about, I thought Exum was going to be a real X factor for his defense on Harden. He was also a little bit better last game, but I still don't think he's been great this series. He's been steady, just we haven't seen the offensive game there at all. Wade calling today as that Dante game. Nice. I like it. I like it. Hope Max takes after PJ's mentality. I hope he does too, but Omax is in a walking boot right now, so he must have had a bad ankle roll or something in practice. I don't expect to see him really probably at all for a while. I mean, the odds of them being able to reactivate him and then play him in a future series, I don't know what the odds are of that. If he's healthy and he's there, he's worth having on the bench, but I hope he has that mentality, and it's exactly the right kind of guys to have under his wing, or rather for the guys for whom he is under the wing, if that makes sense. Let's see. Love the Westbrook becoming Beverly idea, becoming what he hated. Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Lively's reaction on the bench of PJ's pose is hilarious. Man, there were a lot of great reactions to that. You had Lively, you had Tim Hardaway Jr. striking the pose and really down for that. You had a lot of good stuff there with that. I really appreciated that. Just waiting for that Lively 3. Absolutely. Once he gets that, dude, it's game changing for this offense. DGK, what's up? If Josh Green can maintain this level of performance, he's going to be massive for us moving forward. See, and that's the thing is like even before this season began, I believe we had that roundtable, didn't we? We had that roundtable and we were talking about these guys that we had our eye on, and we've been talking for a while about Josh Green. I feel like it's there. I feel like the flashes are there. What we've not ever really been able to get with Green is that consistency. It's always either health driven or it's confidence getting shaky. You know, if he is confident in a knockdown 3-point shooter on top of the hustle and athleticism he can show, then dude's got something. He still needs help navigating screens defensively, but there's something there to it. I don't know that he's like the X factor, but when he is on and he's really contributing, this team does have a little bit of a different ceiling. And that's something you can't take for granted. It's just how long can you have that maintained? King, what's good? Don't think it'll matter since the Mavs are home. Oh, he's talking about since the Mavs are home with Kawhi that game. What's good, King? How many points were scored on Harden? I don't have that specific stat right in front of me, but Harden's been Dallas going at him. I did see some great stuff today from Istok Franco on Twitter today talking about game 3. He was talking specifically about with Dallas, the pick and roll, how the Clippers are guarding. They're doing a better job kind of protecting Zubats in terms of how they're having him guard Luka pick and rolls. Luka has not had near the success targeting Zubats in pick and rolls that he's had previous series against him. And while that's true, the way that he's able to abuse like James Harden and some of these other guys off the pick and roll, much greater degree of success. Kyrie's actually had good success targeting Zubac. So it's kind of one of those things where it's just like, all right, you just have to have that in your mind, that situational awareness of like, all right, who's guarding this pick and roll here, and then use that, or who's instigating this pick and roll here. Let that kind of affect how you roll your offense, how you try to shift and attack in that case. So could be something there now as we've watched this kind of develop and take shape. But yeah, LA, even with all that star power being out, Kawhi and being out Russell Westbrook now, that is a rough place for them to be here. Let's see. TGK, Mavs need to keep the foot on the gas. 100% agree. You need to put this away. Don't play with your food. Clippers are going to be playing desperate, not just because they don't want to go down 3-1, also because they're playing without Kawhi. And sometimes when a team is playing from a point of desperation, knowing that this might be the only, if they lose today, it's not like it's over, because I just refuse to count the chickens before they hatch or whatever. You have to make sure you handle your business. They're going to be playing with their backs against the wall. And if they can steal this game again and be 2-2 against you, both games without Kawhi, then that at least keeps hope open for them that if they can get him right, whether it's before game 6 or something, let's say, I doubt he'd be back as soon as game 5, but you never know whether they get him back. You just don't want to mess with it. Don't play around with it. Don't mess around. You have home court advantage. You have the better team, the healthier team. Handle your business. Handle your business. And you need a total team effort here to make sure that you don't let this slip away. Because as Jason Kidd, I actually, we talk at times about how Jason Kidd will be very corny with things he says, and when he tries to speak, he speaks in like when he tries to be motivating, he'll speak in very generalization kind of talk that just doesn't resonate with fans, at least, and sometimes the players. But he's right. His thing is like Mavericks are up 2-1, and yes, they've looked like the better team for 2.5 games now against the Clippers. Guess what? We haven't done anything yet. He's telling the team, he's telling the fans, we haven't done anything yet. We're up 1 game over the other team in a best of 7 series. We have 2 more games to win before this series is over. So don't get ahead of yourselves. Don't just assume, see, we've pulled away here. The longer this draws out, the more you play with your food, the more you leave yourself open to potential disaster. Don't risk it. Don't play with it. Handle your business. Get ready for the next round. Let me see here. I'm going to actually pull up Iztalk's thread here, because if you're not already following him on Twitter, Iztalk Franco, the dude's breakdowns are so great. It's not just what he's doing with D Magazine and all that, but his analytical breakdowns of this game by game, all throughout the regular season too, but especially in the playoffs, just absolutely invaluable. Adds so much value to the whole thing for you here, just trying to understand what's going on. So here's what he's talking about here. He's like, these were his observations from game 3. He's talking about the different approach with the pick and roll. This is what I was touching on earlier. The Clippers defending screens with Zubats differently against Luka. They're playing drop and very aggressive shrink. And with Kyrie, it's mostly a show too. So Luka had more success against others, whereas Kyrie had more success against Zubats. In 65 pick and roll attempts involving Zubats, Luka has a 0.895 points per chance. That's down significantly from those 2 previous years. But in 76 picks involving others, it was a 1.137. So much more efficient attacking others in that case. But for Kyrie, 30 pick and rolls involving Zubats, a 1.138. And in 31 picks against others, 0.917. So why not mix it up, he says, attacking Zubats with Kyrie and our big early, and then Hunt, Harden, and Powell when you got Luka. Something even just like that just adds such clarity. It's, again, he does a great job of taking these analytics, these kind of advanced stats, and not just like throwing the numbers out there, but then saying like, okay, draw from this. Here's your takeaway from that. Here's how you apply that and take advantage of that in this chess match. And it just adds a lot of value to that, even for casual fans. The action and tempo he's talking about here, again, something great for Dallas. They were a little reckless at times in game 2, especially I think that second quarter. They were a little bit reckless with how fast they were trying to play, but they are the team that can play pace better, and that's going to help you. He's talking about attacking Harden more. So here's to that question earlier about how many points have been scored on Harden. The Mavericks score 1.217 points per chance in actions where Harden is involved as the screen defender. Luka had more success in those, but in Iztalk's opinion, they could attack Harden with Kyrie even more, which I would love because that just plays into their rivalry and their whole tension dating back to the Brooklyn days. Harden is Clippers' best offensive player, so makes sense to make him work even harder on defense. Basically what other teams tried to do to us the last couple of years, just going at Luka nonstop, knowing if you wear him out on defense, you can minimize him a little bit on the other side. Same thing here. Okay, Harden's your best offensive weapon? Fine. We're going to put him in action. We're going to try and make life miserable for him. If not just gassing him, getting him in foul trouble, putting him in a tough spot. Let's see here. Running and getting stops. In games where the Mavericks struggle to get to 100, they had 18 fast break points in game 1, only 10 in game 2, and then 22 fast break points in game 3. The Clippers are much slower, especially when Man or Westbrook are out. Westbrook's out in this game now. So the Mavericks need to run, but not be as careless and loose with the ball as they were in game 2, which I talked about. Finding Luka and getting him the ball ASAP is always the best strategy after stops. But when Luka has struggled shooting the ball in game 3, the difference maker for them was transition. So the Mavericks scored 1.615 points per chance on Luka passes in transition. That's just lethal. We talked about that. Like, it made no sense that it took this franchise this long. Yes, Westbrook is suspended for this game, so he's out. It made no sense that it took as long as it did for Dallas to build a fast break offense. Like, yeah, I understand you got to get the thoroughbreds, as I'll say, to run the fast breaks, but when you got a guy like Luka who can pass like he passes, the fact it took him this many years of being the slowest paced team, just walk it up, basically set up a half court offense, was just mind boggling to me. So I love that they finally incorporated that this year and that they have found true success with it, because it's just easy buckets, especially when Luka can throw a full court dime and an alley oop pass at that from the opposite free throw line. It's just like, there's no reason. If you want to get Luka some rest and not make him run, make it so he doesn't even have to cross the 3-point line. Just chuck the ball down there, drop it on a dime, and you get 2 points before the other team even realizes what's happened. Just great stuff there. Istok also talks about getting Luka more rest early. I touched on this as well, expecting Luka to defend and run to push the pace while playing 43 plus minutes a game is too much, especially when you consider how physical this series is. So, yeah, I agree. I think getting him more rest early on will benefit him, because late third quarter, he was absolutely gassed, I thought. And I thought that contributed a lot to his field goal percentage drop off that we've seen. And then last thing from Istok here, be ready for more zone is his prediction. After the Mavs made their run and went up plus 13 in the game 3 at half, Lou Williams went to zone for almost the entire third quarter. Kyrie was getting his 4th foul, made it more difficult for the Mavericks, and had a lot of problems cracking the zone. So when that game went from like a 23-point lead all the way down to 6, had a lot to do with the Clippers running a zone there. And again, this is where you need Exum to step up and have a big game as that third ball handler. All that, the great stuff from Istok Franco. I think those are fantastic points, great observations, great advanced analytics, and actual application for how we can utilize that in game 4 and forward. Let's see. Luka doesn't look right. He's hardly ever driving to the rim or posting up. Yeah, I think Luka, I think there's something with the knee. We saw that multiple times down the stretch in the regular season where he'd be kind of hobbled, bleeding knees or something. I Luka, there's a difference between playing hurt and playing injured. I think Luka's playing hurt. And so I would like to minimize the toll on him a little bit. And I think Dallas, especially with how physical this series is being and with Luka having to defend, I think that's a huge thing too. They're playing with pace, and Luka himself is defending harder than he's ever defended in a playoff series. I'm not going to say he's never defended this hard, but for prolonged stretches and not just like moments here and there, big key moments, I think it's just wearing him out. He's a little banged up. He's playing very, very physical, talented defensive players he's going against, and he's also pushing pace, and it's just a hard thing to bring all that together and then still have the endurance. Let's just be honest. That's one of those areas where, as great as Luka is, could always stand to be better. To be able to get to the rim and just the conditioning to handle that. Like, you have to be such an otherworldly conditioned athlete to do all of that, plus still get to the rim and deal with that physicality. He's got the size to handle the physicality, but I really have questions about that. So he's not been able to get to the rim as much, which has also limited a little bit of their pick and roll action, where he can really get deep into the paint on his drives and then just give a soft toss or a lob to Lively or to Gafford, because at some point the defender is having to drop off and help on Luka. Let's see here. The thing on Russ that I came across earlier was from, let me double check it here. I believe it was from Woj, but I saw that in passing. So I'm wondering if I caught a, yeah, I got fake wojed. That's awesome. God, I hate the cesspool that is Twitter these days with buying your stupid blue check marks. Yeah, Russell is playing, so there's my foot in my mouth for a good while there. So I'll dock myself a few points on that one. Uh, Looks like Westbrook is still available in this game four. So Clippers are down one of their key guys, but they do still have Russell Westbrook, who game one was a very good difference maker for them, a very good X factor. Did not have near the success in game two. And then in game three, he was an afterthought or a sideshow, whatever. We'll see how that goes here. So, Master Flame, shout out. I actually, believe it or not, I always say this. If somebody actually corrects me on that, fact checks me, I'm cool with that. I want to get it right. I don't want to say that for like a third or a fourth time in this one stream and still be wrong on it. So I appreciate the correction there, or even just raising that because that made me look deeper into it. Like, let me make sure I saw what I thought I saw. When the season started, if you told me that we'd be up 2-1 without Luka playing up to his normal standard, I never would have believed you. Yeah, 100%. Yo, Sports Fury, what's good? Yeah, Kawhi, the claw, great defender, so not having him is significant. Sports Fury says we need Green or Maxi to step up today. I say why not both? Maxi was huge in game two. Maxi was huge in game two, getting that game. I would love to see that. Maxi has actually had a good series so far. And so him and Josh Green, if you got both of those guys going and they bring different things to the game, but if they both have it going, then you're in a very good position to handle your business in game four and go up 3-1. Yeah, and Joe had it right as well. I thought there was a chance that Russ could be suspended. I did, obviously, as I ran with it here, thinking I had seen that earlier. The reason being, like with the NBA like it is now, I mean, he does throw a very hard shove in PJ Washington's direction after that situation escalates a little bit. But you never know. I mean, to me, it would have been a little bit of a soft suspension if that had been the case. But you never know. There's enough there with Russ, I think, being an irritant and being a continual escalating presence in this series that it obviously wasn't going to shock me if he was, especially with today's NBA. But, you know, I think it's best probably this way. He is a potential X factor watch for them anytime because historically speaking, Russell Westbrook can still have those games where he's a triple double and like almost 20 points or something. Like he can have that kind of impact. And his defense is so physical and high motor and relentless that it can be and for the series breakdown beforehand, I listed him as my Clippers X factor. And so, yeah, I think you do have to take that in consideration, and especially if Kawhi now being out, just like Russ was a bigger factor in game one, he might be a bigger factor again today. So that is something to keep an eye on, but maybe to some extent that helps Dallas a little bit in terms of staying focused. That's really one of those things I want to see from this team is them staying focused, not just getting into an advantageous position, but actually like handling their business and closing it out. That's what I want to see. So as I look at this series, as I look at today's game and I try to anticipate what we're going to see, I think we'll see more zone from the Clippers. They definitely, maybe not like their base defense in this game, but something they're going to deploy more frequently because at least in the small sample size we saw in game three, it did throw Dallas off. They used it almost the entirety of that third quarter. And until Kyrie just completely took over in that final little stretch and then the start of the fourth quarter, it really threw Dallas off. Like in that game, in that third quarter, Dallas had 24 points. So it's not like they were shut down. The Clippers had 26, but again, until that last minute 18, I want to say Kyrie had like 8 points in those closing minutes of the third quarter. So as you're looking at that picture gets different as you kind of look at it that way. So I would not be surprised if the Clippers run that a little bit more. Probably try to mix up how they're playing the pick and roll a little bit there. Try to shield Harden however much they can. If you're Dallas, you just have to hunt Harden. You have to put him in those situations again, especially without Kawhi. You have to put him in those tough spots where he's likely to either rack up fouls or that you can just use and abuse him defensively. That is absolutely paramount for Dallas here in getting an edge. As far as it goes with your front court, I think you got to keep getting that penetration in the lane, finding those alley oops. You didn't have a lot of points, obviously, in the first quarter of that game. You had 18 in the first quarter of game 3, but it felt like every one of those points was like an alley oop. So you can take advantage of it. You just got to get into the paint a little bit, and you got to have your guys freeing up. Now, again, part of that was that backline defense for the Clippers when it's Kawhi there, even a not completely healthy Kawhi. That's just better instincts and obviously the physical traits, even if he doesn't have full health by any means, to disrupt some of that. And so I feel like in game 1 and 2, even though he wasn't there in game 1, but you still saw that in game 2, Dallas really couldn't get that part of its game going. Those easy buckets around the rim, those easy oops that just get the team fired up and get the energy going. You didn't get any of that. Game 3, when Kawhi, between his extended rest on the bench and between just physically not being right, you were really able to take advantage for the first time with that. So with him back out again now, the question is going to be, are the Clippers now better than they at least were in game 3? All the alley-oops and all those opportunities, you got to know the Clippers are going to try and attack that and take that away from Dallas, or at the very least limit it. They're probably going to be looking at this and seeing how Luka is also playing banged up, and they're probably going to give Luka, they're still going to try and mix up their coverage to make him work, but they're probably going to be a little bit less blitz heavy at him, where they're just trying to force the ball out of his hands, because Luka 99.9 times out of 100 seems to make the right read and the right play in those situations. But if he's not quite physically right, especially as he's, whether it's his step back threes or whatever, if he's struggling with his field goal percentage, there is a chance that they more than usual try to say, like, all right, we're just going to throw our best defender there, Paul George or whatever. We're going to throw our best defender over there, and we're just going to say, can you do enough to slow him down with where he's at, with how he's playing, so that he doesn't absolutely kill us? Because that was the case in 2020 and 2021, which is like, look, we know Luka's going to go off, but we're going to make sure that if the Mavericks are going to beat us overall, it's going to be because of these other guys as well. Luka's going to go off. Here, you're going to be changing up just a little bit, where it's like, okay, let's see if we can do enough to shield against those guys just a little bit and put it all on Luka, who's not quite at his normal levels. That's all it is. It's just like trying to chess match and attack a weakness or a deficiency or whatever. I think Dallas has done a good job in the couple games that Kawhi played of trying to go at him, Luka hitting him with the too small taunt and all that. Go at these guys, make them work, and try to take advantage of anything you can. There's no apologies for winning. You never apologize for a win, no matter the scenario or how it happens. If a guy is got a banged up knee, I don't care. You attack him that direction. You force him to change directions, to push off that leg, and you just try to take advantage. That's just the nature of the game. And that's the only way you can play it. Let's see. Westbrook disrupted himself last game. He did. Let's see here. So the game today is at 2:30. So we're about to get going here in about an hour, a little under an hour now. Let me know, how you feeling? How we feel? Are we feeling confident that this is a Dallas turning point here, that they're going to get themselves a 3-1 edge? Or do you think that the Clippers are going to throw the kitchen sink at Dallas, and Dallas has to be real careful not to play with their food and end up tied at 2? Because that's where I'm at. I expect the Clippers to throw the kitchen sink, especially if they're without Kawhi. I think they kind of knew at the last game when that wrapped up that they were likely going to be without him. And so I anticipate they're going to make a lot of adjustments today to work around that, and that they've already been preparing for that. and they're going to just throw something very different at Dallas to try and knock them back off their heels. Just looking through my remaining notes here. I liked this tweet from NBA University. He says, having Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively providing exciting athletic center minutes after half a decade of Dwight Powell 20 plus minutes per game feels like ascending to heaven. I love that. I absolutely love that tweet because that's absolutely how we felt as a fan base. He says also D Live is going to be nasty in 3 to 4 years. Some of his short roll passing, come on, he's genuine and he's genuinely huge. Will be perfect next to Luka long term once he figures out the game a little bit more and gets stronger. Again, touching on what point I was making earlier about his passing ability. This is from Landon Thomas after game 3, talking about Kyrie's 19 of his 21 points coming in the second half. This was Jason Kidd's quote, just talking about Kyrie. He says, his calming effect. He's never in a rush, never going to panic. Guys trust him on the floor, and you could just see that in the second half. Because, yeah, Clippers whittled 23 down to 6. Looked like the exact moment you were going to start to get a little bit anxious, a little bit tight. Luka's looking gassed over there, but Kyrie just goes like, this is my moment. Kyrie talks about that heart of a champion moment. He's just kind of like, look, I've been here. I've done this. I know how this goes. I'm still capable. So I'm gonna go out here and I'm just gonna put this to bed. I'm just gonna shh. It's fine. Relax, guys. We got it. Here's three or four buckets in a row of me falling down, crossing guys over, hitting pull-up threes in transition. Like, doesn't matter. We're gonna put this away. That kind of presence, having that while Luka is able to rest on the bench is just so huge. You got Luka jumping higher than he jumps almost any other time of the year on the bench, just celebrating those buckets because he knows, like, oh my god, this is such a relief that if I don't feel like I have to be in the game every single minute. And again, he played like 44 minutes or 45 minutes, something like that. So crazy that in that limited rest, he's still able to be like, oh, good. I don't feel this pressure like I have to do everything. I forget who it was too. And I'm not here ever to try and like shame, but there are tons of bad takes out there, and sometimes they are mine. But there were people saying like of the PJ Washington trade that it was like a terrible trade for Dallas. Not just talking about like the cost of it or whatever. They were trying to say like they were trying to, and these are people. Oh, uh, let's just say logically is in their title, something to do with sporting. And their take was that PJ Washington is actually a bad defender and only marginally better offensively than Grant Williams. Now, this was at the time of the trade. Still a just wild take. Even at the time, I was like, ooh, that's a hot take I don't agree with. But now looking at it, it's just hilarious. It's just amazing. Like, wow, you thought that, huh? You thought that and thought you were being logical, the reasonable person in the discussion about this. Crazy. And you had Clipper fans, before the series talking about how they were going to feast on Derrick Jones Jr. and PJ Washington. And yet the last 2 games, the Clippers haven't even broken 100. There's something to be said there. We'll see how LA looks again without Kawhi. It's hard to say they're going to be better, but if it's a Kawhi only at about 50%, which I feel like he's been hovering somewhere around that range the last couple games, especially this last game, then maybe the table tilts just a little bit, that it's a little bit different and they're able to be more effective on offense, a little bit less limited, but it just means their depth is that much less. It just means that if you get any of those guys into foul trouble, they're in serious trouble. Mm-mm-mm. Lively has to get stronger and develop a jump shot. It's nothing wrong with being a one trick pony, but he has to have more than that. And he will, man. Like, that's the thing is like Lively, he only played 1 year of college and it wasn't in his game at all when he was in high school or in college. Because back then, his athleticism, rebounding, shot blocking, all that took care of it for him. He's got like a 42-inch vertical or something crazy. So you've got all these physical tools you needed. Now it's about the refinement of the game. And everything we saw, even in the pre-draft combine and all that, was, oh, he's actually got a nice developing corner 3-point shot. Form looks good, looks confident. Okay, cool. And you've seen it all throughout the year, him in these clips shooting around and stuff. And I absolutely believe that as soon as next season, he could absolutely have that worked into at least a small part of his game where he can actually stretch the floor a little bit and shoot the three with confidence. Not like he's going to be, Chet Holmgren out there, but you can absolutely stretch the floor a little bit with him and cause some problems. So that would be interesting to see. And as for getting bigger and stronger, yeah, man, he's what, 20 now at this point, or is he still 19? I don't even know. But yeah, he's still young. You let the guy grow into his body a little bit. Tyson Chandler was a beanpole when he came in too. Mavericks had 10 dunks in the first half last game. I said earlier I didn't remember exactly how many it was. ESPN Stats and Info said it was 10 dunks in the first half, which is the most dunks a team has had in a playoff half in over 25 years. Any team in the NBA. So the fact that they were getting all of that going, largely because of getting alley oops and all those easy buckets with drawing that down for the dump off passes, huge. That's a big component that was missing in games 1 and 2 for Dallas. And if they can keep getting those kind of easy buckets, it just changes the complexion for them. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, the Mavericks in this game, I think it was in that third quarter, before the Clippers went on sort of a run of their own to tip it. But there was a 31-9 run by the Mavericks in that game. So things definitely shift in a big way in your favor when you actually have the the war of attrition, when you actually have the closers, the guys who are able to just make life difficult for the other team. When you have team defense like you have, when you have rim protection like you have, and you've got guys that can rebound, even though you lost the rebounding battle in this game, and then the other team, because they're banged up, are losing their guys that can be difference makers. Like, this is where, like, having a complete team works. Like, you look at the state of the league right now, the teams that are breaking through and really on the rise are the teams that were entirely built. They're the guys that were drafted. Like, the teams that are rising up right now are your Timberwolves, are your Thunder. Obviously, the Nuggets have already been here, so it seems silly to say rising up. They've already been here now, but like, those are the teams that make it. The teams that actually draft smart and build. And yeah, you got to hit with some luck on the guys that turn into superstars, but that's your difference compared to these teams that are trying to be artificial super teams. Look how Phoenix destroyed their team, man. They took that team to the finals in a 2-0 lead. They had some nice pieces, and it didn't immediately happen for them the next year. They ran into the buzzsaw that was the Mavericks. Suck it. And they blew things up, basically trying to build an artificial team by, a super team by, like, oh, let's sell out to go get Durant and let's do this. Like, you made your team worse. You basically sold out the future of your franchise in exchange for trying to sprint and chase a single title, which is the most you could have possibly gotten. But like, in today's league, there's too much depth. There's too many teams that are built smart. Like, I know a lot of people are still looking at OKC thinking like they're I don't want to say fraudulent or anything like that, but there are still people who think that they're unproven. And like, to an extent, sure, they were the number one overall record in the West. And yeah, you look at them and you say, like, well, they're a young team. They were in the play-in tournament last year, but then they got, they didn't make the playoffs. They got beat in that. They had to win both of their play-in games. They only won one of them. True. But they're up 3-0 in their series, and they look stellar right now. And so some people trying to look at them and say, like, they're unproven. I don't think it's completely unproven. I think I look at them and say to myself that, like, I'm not thrilled about facing them. I guess if the prospect was facing them versus Denver, I would say, yeah, give me the Thunder. But that's only because I think Denver is the best team in the West. So I look at things like that, and I'm just like, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like, even if you get to that point in a series with OKC, that I'm looking at this saying like, oh yeah, no, we got this. Like, no, OKC is a really good team as well. Like, there's plenty of trouble that they can pose for us as well. So all things to consider, but those are the teams I think that are built the right way and the teams that are thriving, not these teams that are trying to just have three superstars or two or three star players and then just fill out those little vet minimum contracts and things like that. Those teams aren't succeeding anymore. And I think that's good for the sake of the game, that these teams that are being built the right way are finally coming together. So it'll be a really interesting era of basketball we're headed into. But the good thing is, as Nico Harrison pointed out, the Mavericks, they're not just built for right now. Like, their roster, how they've been constructing this, we talked about this before and during the season with the youth that they have on this team. They're building this roster for the next 3-4 years. Now, I got to say a little bit, like, if Kyrie's with you that whole time, I do have a little bit of reservations about thinking, like, because Kyrie's 31, 32. Somebody correct me in the comments exactly. I guess I don't have to say that. I do have the magic of Google right here at my fingertips. Kyrie's exact age is 32. I was right. I say right as I really drew out that guess. But Kyrie Irving, 32. So the idea of 4 years, 36-year-old Kyrie, even if you do have him here at that point, is kind of like, yeah, I mean, you're not having to make him as big of a part of it, but not many guards are still tearing it up at that age, especially if with his agility and handles and everything, like, it can still be effective. But I still have some reservations about that. But I do overall think that the roster is 100% built, not just for right now, but next year and the year after that, and probably the year after that. So I love what they're doing. I think Dallas is finally working smart in its roster construction, where it's not just patchworking crap together every single year like it's done for the last 15 years, basically since the championship. So it's good to see that they're doing this. And now, as you're seeing this new movement of these new teams rising up, teams that never get talked about in this, like, until the last few years, Denver was never talked about. Maybe they were a tough, stout team, but they weren't talked about as like a real contender or a real whatever. Now they are. Now they are the blueprint. You look at Minnesota coming up out of nowhere these last couple of years. You look at OKC, who caught more slack and slander. It's not caught slack, caught more slander, more flack and slander. There you go. More flack and slander than anybody. They were in the playoffs like 3 years ago with Chris Paul as a 5 seed when they had like a 0.1% chance by ESPN's prediction before the season. Made the playoffs, went to 6 against the Westbrook Harden Rockets, and then, or did it go to 7? I don't remember exactly. It might have been a game 7. But even after all of that, had 2 years where they were in this tanking mode, just acquiring draft picks. And you had people like from the national media saying like, "Oh, they got to get Shea out of there. Like, it's really sad seeing them waste this kid when they clearly have no plan of what they're doing." No plan of what they're doing. What are you talking about? Look how many draft picks they have. Look how they can mortgage the future. I personally think they should have been more aggressive at the trade deadline, because uh, Hayward's doing nothing for them. Like, goose eggs, nothing for them. And that's the only thing they did at the deadline. And with all your picks, you could have done something. You could have been more aggressive, but that's a different discussion. You look at like how they built, and it's like, for a team that was only down for 2 years after a several year run in the playoffs and in contention, for them to be in this position now, it's just like, it's weird that they don't get, and I get they're the smallest market NBA team, but it's weird to me that the kind of criticism and flack that they'll get. But I love seeing that, like, okay, with how they're building it, they're here. They look like they've got staying power. The T-Wolves here look like they got staying power. The Nuggets, I think, are going to be here for a while. And now you're looking at Dallas, and I feel like Dallas is kind of creeping into that territory where you're like, you're going to be here a minute at least. And, if you keep building this way, smart like this, you could be here for a good minute too. So I like what I see Dallas doing. And I didn't think this was the year. I think their mentality was like, look, we're going to move as if we're trying to go for it. And if it works, great. But this is really like setting us up more for like next year and the year after that and the year after that. And I just think that the trade deadline moves they made worked out to almost the absolute highest possible outcome that they could have. The best case scenario probably that they could have worked out to, that they have. They are phenomenal fits, not just in terms of their defense, not just in terms of their the intangibles they bring to it, but just the culture change they helped bring to the team to shift it into like a very, very capable defense and rebounding team. That it doesn't matter. It's more often than not, Mavericks are losing 3-point shooting battles, and it doesn't matter, even though they sacrificed a little bit of shooting on paper, at least, because Williams wasn't giving you anything after the first 12 games, it felt like. Even though they sacrificed a little bit of shooting up front, they said, dude, we got Luka and Kyrie. It's okay if we sacrifice a little bit of offense as long as we get the defense and the rebounding that we need here. They made that move, and the entire complexion of this roster, of this trajectory for the rest of the year for this team changed. And I think that goes beyond this year, obviously. So, yes, I love what the Mavericks are doing. I love that as we're looking at this emerging new era where you have KD down 0-3, or did they get swept? I don't even remember at this point. I honestly, if they're not swept, it's already basically done. Lakers, I know, fended off a sweep. They got one finally, so it's 3-1 there. You're just looking at this emerging era. Steph didn't even make the playoffs, and you're like, we're on the precipice of a new era of the NBA, and of these blueprint model franchises that we're looking at now. It's a lot of fresh, uncommon faces. But I do feel like you're kind of starting to creep into that similar territory. You don't have the same amount of youthful depth, but you've got several young pieces that are like, that's a nice piece to have to your team. Like, that gives you leverage. That gives you not just trade leverage, that gives you something. We still haven't even seen what Jaden Hardy can be. I think we've seen flashes of it. He's still a fascinating X factor to me moving forward. But we'll just have to see what the future holds for this team. Right now, I'm thrilled seeing this come together, seeing them respond after taking that gut punch in game one. And I hope they can handle their business. Let's see here. Mavericks have Lively, Gafford, PJ, and Luka for a few years. This team is going to be a real force, especially if Kyrie stays longer, says Lawrence. Yeah, no, I agree. 100%. Juanez Borda, DDP, do you see Luka and Kyrie going off today and more of a role player and more role players getting stats and Luka and Kyrie still being there but don't have to go off? Do you think the Clippers will keep looking for Zubats download today? Yeah, I would love to see Luka or Kyrie, put their foot on the Clippers' throat here and just put this out. Again, attack Harden. Luka attacking Harden in particular in pick and roll situations has been destroying him. And especially with Harden being LA's best offensive weapon right now, you're going to be very well suited doing that. You put stress on him, mitigate a little bit of what he's doing in return, and you can get him into foul trouble that puts him in a really, really difficult spot. That's all legitimate and worth considering. Honestly, though, for me, the role players. Why do I say that? Because no matter what, this series is going to go back to LA. And as I keep saying, role players play better at home historically. Not always. Sometimes when you have a team that's really doing special stuff, you will have role players who show up on the road in big moments. Dallas needs that. And they got a little bit of that in game two, not hardly any in game one. That's what you need. And so for me, you started to see these guys breaking through in game two. Took another good step in game three, felt like a more complete team effort. You saw flashes, still not enough on the offensive end in a lot of cases, other than Lively, I felt like did it. But I want to see a little bit more on that side. And now, for me, the big thing is confidence and momentum. Get your role players, Exum in particular, get them going, get them dialed in, and rolling into game five with presumably, hopefully, LA's season on the line, and have them going in with PJ Washington's same attitude. Have them going in with the folded arms and just kind of staring, glaring, whatever at the bench, the opposing bench, just like, dude, I don't even know why you're here. It's over. We've already decided. You go in with that kind of swagger and attitude, it's done. Like Luka and Kyrie going off and doing something phenomenal, combining for 70 points or something. Yeah, that's awesome. But you know what? That's the more expected thing. They do that even if you win today with them doing that. That has less team-wide carryover than if your role players step up and deliver a huge blow today to the Clippers. If your role players step up, if you got Exum getting you 11, 12, 13 points off the bench, maybe timely buckets there in the second half. If you got Josh Green splashing a couple of threes and making several hustle plays, playing good defense, if you've got Lively knocking down or throwing down alley oops, blocking shots on coming from the help side. You have Gafford playing with physical control. There was a great move Gafford had in that last game where he takes a dump off pass from a pick and roll, basically does a spin move power dribble into a contested hook shot off the glass. Whole thing was just such an act of grace and control. And he bucketed, dropped it right in the bucket. Absolutely loved it. And that's the point where I looked at it, I was like, offensively, that's a confidence builder. Alley-oops are great. Dunks are great. That is a confidence builder. That's the kind of way he was shooting when he went on either of those like crazy long consecutive made field goal runs. That when you're making that move, that's where you're like, I got this. My whole body is in sync with this. I have great control. I'm playing through the physicality, playing with grace and power at the same time. And the light touch with the hand, that's such a tough finish. So seeing that from him, if I'm seeing a little bit more of that as well today, give me the role players all day, every day. As much as I love seeing Luka and Kyrie go nuts, I would love it if both of them had 20 points, basically, just like last game, but the role player stepped up today and you had multiple guys in double figures, or at least right around it, but multiple guys making big plays where you're like, oh, dude, we wouldn't have won if, you can't say like this would have been the win that it was without this guy doing this and this, or, you know what, actually this guy over here had this great play too. And, oh, that great hustle play that set him up then a moment later for that corner three. Oh, awesome. When you have those kind of things where you feel like you would be remiss if you didn't point in multiple different directions and give your props to these role players, that's huge for the team, for them to feed off of, because that's also going to help Luka and Kyrie because it lightens their burden and it makes them more confident about their teammates going into the next game as well. And those guys, because it's so hard to have that absolute dog mentality on the road in the playoffs. That's why role players, even great role players, typically are better at home in the postseason than they are uh, on the road. And so you have that situation where it's like you build that confidence here, you give them that unbreakable mentality, and then you send them out to LA to try and close out the series, hopefully. It's just different. That's more valuable, and that will carry over from one series to the next as well. You can absolutely have those sort of performances emerge where you turn the corner. James Harden's breakout in Oklahoma City in his third year was in the postseason. Like, he was good in the regular season. We were looking at him and like, oh yeah, he could be a really nice player for them. He settled into his 6-man role pretty nice. Cool. And then they had that run where they had to go through a brutal 7-game series with the who was it that they had first? I think first they had I know they had the 7-game series against the Grizzlies, and then they had Dallas in the West Finals. But I'm trying to remember who their first round opponent was. I digress. It might have been like Denver or Utah. Some of these run together. I'm not as well versed in my Thunder history as I am my Mavericks history. But the point is, it was in that postseason run where Harden emerged, and all of a sudden you were like, oh, no, I know Brunson broke out against Utah. I'm talking about for OKC, James Harden. The point of that I was making was Harden's breakout when he became James Harden started in the postseason. In the regular season, you were like, yeah, he was really good. He was a nice player, interesting prospect moving forward. And then he had this great postseason run as the Thunder made their run to the West Finals, where they were eventually beaten in 5 games by Dallas. And that was when you were just like, okay, this dude could be something. And then the next year was his 6th Man of the Year award, and the Thunder go to the finals. And then after that, he's in Houston and he becomes James Harden, like as he was known. So, my point of all that was to say a role player can carry that momentum from one series to the next. If you build that confidence in the series, it can carry over. And sometimes that can snowball. Sometimes it can carry from one series to 2 series. Um, and if the guy's got like a lot of greatness to him, maybe he can carry that over, and that just becomes the standard. Maybe a switch flips, and then he's in a new gear. I'm not saying that's going to be the case of any of the role players for the Mavericks. Obviously, I'm just saying you can have that kind of momentum for role players, and it's why it's so important, and why I think it's more important, really, for the role players to come up huge today for Dallas than it is for Luka and Kyrie to both drop 30 points or something like that. If you got 60, 70 points between them, cool, great, fun to watch. But you need to have those role players playing a big part in it too. And I want a big scoring part in it. The defense, we know that's there. That's great. I want to see the role players putting points on the board, because that's an even greater mark of that confidence. That Gafford bucket I mentioned earlier, that's worth 3 blocks to me, because for him, I felt like he was so thrown off in game 1 and 2. Again, going 1 of 7 from the field after being 33 consecutive made baskets in the regular season. And then it had another stretch basically to close the season, aside from those last 2 games, of like another 24 made baskets in a row. And it was just like, dude, what the hell? You are on. And then he had that 1 of 7. And I was like, ooh, I worry about if that's going to flip the switch the other way now, where that confidence is going to wane. But you see that bucket, and I bet you're going to see more of it today. I think he's going to bounce back and be at least a little more settled, play more like we saw him play in game 3, as opposed to 1 and 2. But that pretty much is going to wrap up my time here. If you guys got any quick last second, last minute, whatever questions you want to throw in the comments, feel free to drop them here. This has been basically a post game for game 3 / pre-game for game 4 here in 25 minutes now. Throw me the questions if you got them, but I'm basically about to wrap this up. I got to get a couple things situated before I sit down to watch this game. I think I hit all the questions that I saw currently in the chat. I'll scroll back through it real quick just to be sure. Salute to all of you in the comments as well, dropping in. I appreciate you taking the time to visit with me today. Talk Mavericks basketball, always a pleasure. Well, I don't see any more dropping in, so I'm going to just wrap this up here. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the Dallas Prospect, and until next time, guys, remember, every legend was once